directions I was mentioning, there was a really awesome connection in our trainings where she mentioned an airport. And when you're in the airport and it's busy and there's a lot going on and you need to get where you need to go, we often look for an icon or an image of luggage, an image of bathroom to get where you need to go. You don't have the time and you are too stressed really to stop and read directions. So that's another thing that helps. And then part of the non-confrontational piece is when students are struggling, when they're frustrated, the training teaches us to approach that student from the side and to get there slowly, to not make it clear or make that student feel singled out that you're off task, I'm coming to you, and everybody's watching. So it kind of lowers the pressure, lowers the breathing of the room, the stress level of the teacher, the stress level of that student, and the students around who are wondering what's going to happen to that kid who is clearly not doing what they're supposed to be doing. So in a lot of ways, I would credit Agway with the change, the shift in our building of lower stress level, quiet, peaceful, productivity.
Well, excellent presentation on so many fronts and a whole lot of information to process. And if I may, Madam Chair, kind of go down the line, your direction. Could I begin first of all with the first area, family engagement, and then continue in the fashion in which the presentations occurred. Julie, the monthly parent committee meetings, how widely aware do you think members in the community are, and how successful do you think you are being? I did hear a number of 100 and something people who attended one, and a lot of excitement of those who did attend. Is there a goal, though, in terms of how many parents or what percentage those parents represent, and what the actual goal of the monthly parent committee meetings are?
Great questions. We just talked about it at our family engagement meeting this morning. When I took over this position, there was kind of a core group of 11 people that were meeting monthly around family engagement. We have outgrown our first space and are just about to outgrow our second space at Northrop. So in terms of attendance, I'm very pleased. In terms of variety of community members, percentage of people that are attending, as I mentioned before, we have a great cross-section of families, teachers, staff, people who speak other languages, people of different races that are attending, single parents that are dealing with issues that they have felt that they're in a trusting relationship enough to kind of share with the whole group their personal struggles as single parents and help us problem solve some of those situations with them. So I haven't written down a goal, Mr. Barlow, but my goal is to continue to outgrow spaces, to continue to find bigger places for us to meet, and continue to accept anyone who wants to be in attendance to be there. One thing that I ask everyone that attends all of our meetings, I ask of them is to take the message of what we've talked about that day and share it back at their sites. So I post notes of what we've discussed on our website, and I also ask all of our individuals that are based at sites or in community organizations to go back and share what we've discussed. And then they have in turn brought more people with them back to the next meeting. So that's how we're kind of getting the message.
Okay, so is that number reflective of parents and staff, or just parents?
The number.
Oh, when you say X amount of people attended a monthly parent committee meeting, is that number reflective of just the parents?
The whole entire group.
To
And then
staff?
our family engagement activities are our families. That would be our students and our parents that are attending our activities that we have for like the Love and Logic night. those would be specific to our family.
Thank you.
Before you go on, any board members have any questions they'd like to ask Ms. Ruzek that might tie into some of this before we go? That way I think we can be a little bit more comprehensive. Okay. Ms. Martin?
And I don't have a question, but I think this might clear things up a little bit. The meeting you had this morning, for instance, it's amazing to me, it's not amazing, it's gratifying that you and other members of the committee are not looking at a one-size-fits-all fix. So one thing we're gonna do to every kid and every family, that people show up in one school was saying that they open the gym at night. Another school was saying, you know what, we have family potlucks. Another school said, we finally found a place where we can keep food and clothes for our kids. So every school, has its own community, and they're all working on different programs, different initiatives that seem to work for their neighborhood. So it's not just people, I think, who show up at the events that you organize, but it's that ripple effect that people get other ideas about things they can do.
Okay. And then Janie, quick question regarding the ramp. How are students made aware and given the opportunity to select, and how successful has that been? I do recall you also indicating that there's a desire for parents to assist in that process, as well as staff that may be direct as well. Can you perhaps, I am curious about the student participation or their selection regarding that.
So I can answer part of that. I can answer the part of how the information process and dissemination of information looked. And that is that we created a presentation so that all students received the same information. And that was given to each fifth grade teacher. We provided some training for the fifth grade teachers to talk with their students about it. Each of the fifth grade teachers presented it to their students, talked with their students about it. We held parent information sessions at Kellogg Auditorium, where we invited all parents. Our bilinguals helped us, our equity specialists helped us to make sure that families were aware of it, to provide them with additional information. I believe, although I shouldn't say this out loud, I believe the presentation itself was made available to parents through the website. And a Skyward was sent out with that link saying, fifth grade parents, go here to learn more, et cetera, et cetera. You couldn't be a part of the meeting. If you have any questions, give us a call. So there's been a lot of conversation that has happened fifth grade teachers to fifth grade students and families. Why? Because they already have the relationship, they already have the connection with the students and the families. The registration process itself is still in process, so I don't know exact numbers. We have preliminary numbers, but we still have a number of students unaccounted for, so I can't speak to that at this point in time, but I certainly would be more than happy to share it with you once we have those numbers in. We are frantically trying to gather them as we start rolling into staffing and planning for appropriate staff to teach the middle level math at the right levels.
Board members? I'm sorry.
And Willie, in terms of the equity specialist, and you'll have to forgive me, you guys did such an excellent job of presenting the information. I would hope that maybe in the future, we could maybe have small, maybe a group, equity specialists present on a night, and, just my dream board meeting, and you may have answered the question. I know prior to my being elected to the board, I did participate as at the ALC as in youth mediation that MCS has provided and continues to provide at ALC and now replaced the Boys and Girls Club. So the training you guys are receiving or have received, it's at a credentialed conflict mediation training you have, or just?
Yes. Okay, yeah, and just a couple things, you know, lately there's a lot of conversation out there on the 2015-16 discipline data, and I just wanna talk a little bit about a timeline with you. It was in, I think some around early mid-fall was when we announced, or we had the agreement with OCR. Early January, we had the first community meeting, and then early March, we had the second community meeting. At that time is when the community focus team was organized. We had our very first, what I would call equity training in May, and then have done training through the summer and early this fall. So I'm really, as I said, if you watched the news report last night, I'm excited about some of the progress we're seeing. You saw some of that progress tonight. But as I said on the TV, we still have a long ways to go. But when you think about the amount of time that we've been providing professional development, and even in some, we're still trying to get all of that spread to every staff member in every building. I'm quite impressed that some of the sites are able to see the results that they've seen already in this first semester. I also said that we need to check on the schools that aren't showing improvements. And is it an implementation? Is it a training? What is that? But we will continue to work with those sites and continue supporting the sites that are showing some improvement. So we wanted to share what we believe is a little more realistic data than last year's data. Then I also want to make you aware of that I will be taking over the community focus team. I will be facilitating that group. We have our very next meeting coming up March 28th at 5:30 in the boardroom. And we will be meeting every other month on the fourth Tuesday at 5:30. There was some discussion, I think, in the news last night that there was only 5 members, community members. I think that might have been true at our last meeting in late January, but that was a meeting that we rescheduled. We had it earlier, but it was weather, we had to cancel, reschedule it. So I don't know if that contributed to the number of people who were there. I can tell you we sent out 42 emails to 42 members reminding them about the meeting on the 28th. And we're always looking for additional community members, especially who would like to join and help us. So we're looking forward to that. But that, like I said, is on the 28th at 5:30 in the boardroom.
Well, I wasn't finished, but
Okay.
we're going to order presentation, but we might as well jump to discipline. And speaking of well, I'll just stick with that. Thank you, Heather and Melissa. What wonderful information. I can assume by your presentation and the success you're experiencing, you must either be school number 1, 2, or 3. Maybe not. But it is important for us to know indeed where our successes are, as well as where our needs may be. And so I would never say we should hide from the fact that there are schools that have needs, just as we are proud to say there are schools that are, addressing them. And so Envoy training seems like it's a great strategy that is working. And so would you say that it was more so to help the children de-escalate, or staff to potentially know how to de-escalate, or a combination of the two?
I wouldn't say that it's about de-escalation at all, because it prevents any escalation. So I think it was in response to a lot of the escalation and the frustration of students, and just a climate of stress, really. And I think that just the teacher, lowering the level of teacher stress and increasing the time of productivity has just been a bonus. are more sure of what they need to do. They don't feel challenged by their teacher. Another big thing about Roy is focusing on the work. You look at the work, you look at the floor, you look at the wall, and so you're not meeting that child face on and staring them in the eyes and asking them to do what you want them to do. So that takes away that moment of stress for the child and for the teacher. And so instead of having those escalated moments where the child doesn't know what to do first off and is just trying to ask for help but maybe doesn't do it in the right way, and then the teacher feeling frustrated not knowing what the child really needs or wants, we focus on here are your directions. I'm going to wait until all of you are settled in and at least attempting those directions, and then I'm going to be out to help. And I'm going to walk slowly, and I'm going to approach you either from the side or from an angle where you don't see me coming and feel, she's coming to me. And then getting the child to focus again on the directions to make sure that they understand what to do. And then if not, answering those questions quietly and calmly.
Yeah, I popped in and out of the training and had the opportunity to role play some of the things. I got really good at being the kid. So enjoyed that a little more than the teacher part. But for me, it was almost when something's little and finding ways to address it so it doesn't become a big matter. And then there's confrontation, and then it escalates, and then now you get to go to the office. So it was just classroom management things that kind of kept things down. Is kind of the impression I got in it.
The child might have wanted to do the work, but they are so used to not knowing what to do or not knowing how to follow the directions, so they act out, and then maybe that's really a cry for help, trying to tell you that they don't know what to do, and then you sending them to the office is super counterproductive. It's not what you wanted at all. It's not really what they wanted either. And so just avoids that situation altogether.
And I guess I would add also is that our teachers were really asking for additional staff development on having more behavior management strategies. They really came to the administrative team and said, we want this, we want some additional training. And so we were able to offer that, and this gives them multiple steps that they can try, so they don't feel like if I try something and it doesn't work, well, now what do I do? The next step is to ask the child to leave and go to the office. They have a number of strategies that they feel that they can use, and it's really about empowering the teacher or empowering that adult that's working with the student as far as the skills that they have and building their confidence in those skills as well.
We've also seen it really empower the kids, because they look at those directions that they come to expect them now. They're called exit directions, and they'll ask for them if you forget to put them up. Where are my exit directions? And they know how to follow those a lot. They're clear, they're concise, they use images rather than lengthy words. So they know what to go back to if they forget what their directions are and what they're supposed to do.
One of our administrators was filling in a classroom while a teacher was at a conference, and she was not standing in the right spot to give directions, and the children told her, you need to stand over there when you give us directions. So they are really becoming accustomed to this.
I have a follow-up question for you. You might not be able to answer it, but it seems to me that it would be really helpful if teachers received this kind of training during their teacher preparation while they're in college. Do you know if there's been any efforts on that level? I remember from my own teacher training days back in the dark ages that classroom management was barely addressed.
I'm not aware of it being implemented at that level.
Mr. Smith?
I'm trying to kind of understand some of the numbers, and looks like when we look at total referrals for the elementary through winter break, I know the time frame is not, because we got, some of this is through 15, 16, 16, 17, and then we got the sunset day, which is September through February 9, so we're not talking the same exact time frames. I think you alluded to that earlier, but as I look at this, and I see the elementary going down one, basically total referrals, and I see your referrals down 25%. Is this,
We had some
do
so
they
far.
account,
We had some elementary.
do they
go
account,
up.
are they the only ones that got the training this far? Do they account for all of the reduction? I'm just thinking if we can have the data so the time frame is the same, so we're comparing, it would help with the analysis. Because I look at the data overall for the whole total district, and it looks like we're still going up. Total referrals went up 5.9%, according to the math that I did. And then when you break it down by racial groups, whites had the largest increase. But it seems like referrals are going up, they're not going down. Now, I know we have more students, and I count, but, I'm just trying to wrestle with the data and hearing the good things that we're doing. At which point can we expect to see an overall, based on what we're doing, an overall reduction?
And slide 14 gives you elementary, district level, same time period. Through winter break.
What is that time frame exactly?
Start of school year until end of first semester, basically.
December 21st.
So it's a couple months short of the report that we've got this nice. I'm gonna ask you, but I think it'd just be helpful if we had the data sets, following the same time frame, so you can correlate everything back to, together. It makes it a little bit more difficult, at least in my elementary way of thinking, trying to, get the most out of what the data is telling us. I see apples and apples in some of the data, and then I see apples and oranges.
I thought, maybe I'm looking at it wrong, I thought all of these are starting to use the winter break,
Ours was.
except for there.
we-
Oh, yeah, that's,
there.
that's going, I know that subset,
Yeah.
but I know that their numbers for, at least through December then, is in the overall numbers reported up above.
Yeah, if we look at the elementary,
I don't think they probably have from December to February, did they have that much more, or, I'm just trying to figure, where does it fit into the overall elementary, and then the overall, no, because they're clearly going the right direction.
well, some are. I mean, if you look at the elementary through winter break, yeah, they are, yeah. When you look at the total number, we actually only dropped one. But what that means is some of our sites have drastically reduced and some have gone up. So, we have work to do in some sites, the other sites we need to keep doing, you're doing great, keep working. Then we have some sites, that's why I said we need to see, is it the sites that haven't had all the onboard training yet? If it is it an implementation problem, or is it not the right fit for that particular building?
Well, I'm not trying to be overcritical, don't necessarily, I'm just trying to, get this information in a way that can process, and it just seems that there's just so much attention that we put on this issue, that I think I just, not knowing anything else, I would have expected to see overall, perhaps a decrease in total referrals for the district, but the data doesn't, if I'm reading right, it doesn't show that. It is what it is, I'm not being overly critical, I think the fact that we're talking about is good, and the fact that we're doing stuff, it's all good, but at some point, I would think that we'd wanna have an expectation that we wanna see these follow what the experience that you're having at Sunset. That's all I'm trying to, the point I'm trying to make.
So a point of clarification and then just a question. So the discipline data with the majors, are the majors we're referring to defined based on PBIS and PBIS only?
No, they would be defined by if they're bringing in an administrator and entering the offense as an office referral. So the data I pulled, that I shared with you is Skyward, pull that out of Skyward, and this is the system that is used to report to OCR.
Okay, great, thanks. And then my follow-up to that is work which I'm sure that you are doing, because I believe you have due diligence, especially in terms of the elementary students. I imagine that sites look at that by grade. And just curious if there's some, not to share now necessarily, but in the future, maybe certain grades are more receptive or especially with bringing in the Envoy training. You know, if there's differences or patterns we're seeing with that, especially if something new like the Envoy training, you know, a fifth grader who's maybe not had that might be a little bit more resistant than a first or kindergartner who's like, oh, okay, I get it, and it makes sense. And so I think to Mr. Munoz's point, if, you know, you may find places where it's not as effective for those reasons. It's more an observation than a question. Thank you.
Ms. Becker?
I mean, again, just looking at the data, and it seemed like at the high schools, there was a real significant drop. So what happened, what good is happening? What more good is happening at the high school level? I mean, what do you attribute the drop to?
For me, I think it's really, they've had the conversation about really what should be sent to the office for, you know, shouldn't we be doing discipline the way we've done in the past? And I think, because obviously the high schools haven't gone through the Envoy training. It's been pretty much elementary, and I don't know if some middle schools have or not, but Envoy's been more of an elementary thing. The high schools, I think it's just more of an intentional, we need to really think about how we're handling discipline in the classroom and how we're handling, should it be sent to the office or not. And then I will tell you, if you notice on the slides, the middle school have not seen improvement whatsoever, but I'm not for sure about that, because as I've been sharing with you in my weekly updates, we've been going to schools and they're giving their presentation to us, and we were at a middle school, I do believe it was last week, and they were sharing their discipline data with us, and they said for the month of December, January, February, we averaged, I think it was 60 office referrals a day. And I literally almost fell in my chair. I said, 60? I said, I'm a middle school principal. You tell me 60 kids come in here a day? And they go, no. They code a minor as an office referral. So if a teacher or if a student says something inappropriate, the teacher says, you know, you don't use that language in here. They document it in PBIS because, and I understand why they do it, because, you know, after 5 times you get a record that you corrected the same kid on that, maybe that warrants a physical office referral. So I think we need to sort some of that out too. Some sites are recording minors get rolled into the office referrals that are not physical office referrals. I literally just fell on my chair. I was just like, are you kidding me? And I said, no, it's really about 10 physical office referrals, but they're recording stuff, how they handled it in the classroom. But when we run the data, I don't know if it's PBIS or Skyward, it goes as an office referral. So that's something we gotta get that straightened out as well.
I was gonna bring up that point, so thank you, Mr. Munoz. Does everybody have the same understanding of what is a major disruption or a major defiance? Because, I mean, in conjunction with what he just said in terms of 60 office referrals per day might not be as accurate as we would want. So is there any way to break that down, or do all schools have the same understanding that a major disruption might include, as examples, this, and this?
Yeah, that's another problem we're discovering. Actually, one of our schools who actually saw an increase, as I said, our upper lobby meets with them monthly to go over their, and what we pushing this building administrator, you know what, you need to sit down with the staff and establish what constitutes a minor, and what constitutes a major, what gets into the office and what do you handle in the classroom. Some of that, some sites, they've had those conversations, established those. We were at an elementary last week for their data presentation. They showed us, they have on cards, this is minors, these are majors. So that's happening. So there's a lot, as I think I said to the reporter, there's many pieces to this puzzle and we're trying to get them all put together. But I'm happy that we're seeing some results. We're not even close to being where we need to be, but at least we're seeing a little progress, and now we're identifying areas where we need to work, and we're even getting to the point where we know where we need to work specifically in that building to help them see some changes.
And then one follow-up question question quickly. So, I'm assuming that these, for example, Sunset Terrace, September through February 2017, you had 237 minor disruptions. Were those 237 different students, or were some of them repeat students?
They can be repeat students, those are incidents, they're not students.
Okay, right, so, I mean, I think that's another piece of the puzzle, that we really, really need to know that maybe of 300 incidences that are reported, it's only happening with 6 particular students, and not that you're having mayhem in your building all the time.
Correct,
In
and
the
that's.
principal's office with 60
yes,
people in there every day.
yeah. And that's something that our PBIS team, when they look at the data, they pull it apart like that, and the same with like grade level PLCs, is they are looking at, for example, exactly what you mentioned as far as which students are generating, the office referrals. Do we need to put together a specific support plan for a student? And that's part of the PBIS plan is, when they see students that are generating, more referrals, then they put together that next level of support for that student.
You know, I think it would really be helpful for the board and the public to have at least some idea of what that is. It's very apparent that you do that work at the building level in terms of, this is the student who's been in here 10 times and we have to, try some other mode of getting through to them. But when we report numbers, I mean, Mr. Smith was alluding to this earlier, when we report numbers in such a broad term where maybe not even all the terms are very well defined, not your fault, that's just what it is, then people could, the takeaway could be is, oh my gosh, we have a mess in the Rochester Public Schools, versus if we had a little bit more disaggregation of the data for the benefit of the public and the board, I think that could be helpful. And I don't know if the software that you use currently can tease out some of those things or not. I mean, that's obviously that's management issue, that's your problem.
Can we do that?
It is important to understand the nuances.
Yeah.
Because the nuances here, are really significant.
You're absolutely right, and it's all a matter of how many slides you were able to look at.
I'd say that's the one better.
You know, I mean, I think percentages could even be helpful, like the percentages of repeat offenders was 89%, and we had X number of offenders. I don't think we could necessarily have tons more slides, but I think some of those, as Barry said, some of those nuances would be helpful to me.
It just leads to better understanding what it's saying, because there's so many nuances here. This discussion has been really helpful, and I appreciate all the hard work you're all doing. This is a very important piece of what we're working on as a district, and we need to get it right. And so we need to understand the nuances between building to building, and how we're reporting this stuff, so that when we put these numbers up here, that we got a lot of confidence in the numbers, and they're not going to allow me to mislead myself or others by the way I look at the information. So the discussion, I found the discussion to be very, very helpful. I can see that we're making progress. It's just nice to see it start to happen on steroids. Maybe I'm just anxious. So I guess I'll challenge you all to keep up the good work and do that.
And I think it's also really important that we celebrate those small steps. Like when your child first takes those first couple of really toddly steps, you don't say to them, okay, tomorrow you're gonna run a marathon. We're making progress. We're looking at basically a growth model. I would think the same way we use a growth model in other examples. Ms. Marvin.
I appreciate the data, but I think as Mr. Munoz said, that there is a difference in some buildings in terms of what they report, how they report it. And more than data, I guess I'm really interested in the kind of thought process, the kind of discussions that are going on within the buildings. And I understand now Aflabi is meeting with the principals, and to me, the discussions that staff and students are having in that building in terms of building trust with each other, in terms of staff doing a better job of trying to understand where kids are coming from, the differences, that they don't need fixing, but they do need educating that there are gonna be compromises you have to make in terms of behavior if you're gonna succeed in school, if you're gonna succeed outside of school. And I'm hoping that in addition to collecting numbers about office referrals, we're also spending time talking to the kids. What's happening here? Is it getting better? Are you feeling less marginalized? Well, I hope we're talking to staff. You know, what do you need that we're not supplying you with yet? You know, is there training or is there time to work with each other? What is it that we can do together so that this place becomes a place where staff and students trust each other, communicate with each other, that we're still gonna need office staff there, deal with kids who get sent there, and hopefully a kid is sent to the office, something good happens. There's somebody there who can embrace him or her. And I know this is getting late, but when I was in the classroom, I had a kid who every day, he would do something so outrageous, so he would get kicked out of class. Now, I didn't kick kids out of class. Comes to find out, his girlfriend was a student volunteer that hour in the office, and apparently she was a lot cuter than I was, so he wanted, anyway, we fixed that one. But it's just, data doesn't tell you everything, and I'm hoping that in our buildings, we're spending time really listening to kids and staff, so that we know what do they need, that maybe we can help them to do better.
If I could just add, in terms of our community schools model that we're implementing at our 3 sites, that is a requirement that we're talking to all of our stakeholders, that we're holding groups of students, meetings with groups of our students, with our parents, with our staff, and asking them, this, like you mentioned, Ms. Marvin, this is your school community, what do you want it to look like, and what do you need? And so looking at all of our stakeholders and asking about their needs and their hopes and their dreams is a requirement. And I hope for now it's at those 3 sites, but that will grow and that we can continue to embrace that model of talking and listening to all of our stakeholders in terms of finding out what they see for their own future.
Mr. Slushner has been waiting patiently.
You actually asked all the same exact questions that I had about the consistency from school to school, because, you know, that is one of the things that came out of the news there, is the consistency that's needed. And, you know, as a data-driven person myself, it is important to understand that the rules for collecting the data, you know, as they've changed, as it sounds like they kind of have, that is taken into account as well. So in some of the places where we've seen things appear to be better, well, are they really better, or are they really the same with a different set of rules? So, yeah, I see this as something that, you know, we need a district-wide consistent statement across all the schools to track the data effectively from year to year to see if progress is truly being made.
Mr. Barlow.
And I appreciate the opportunity to hear from the superintendent and other board members. And I don't think I'm hearing that we think we have arrived, or that we're, that we're doing pretty good. It's expected. I hope we each understand it is expected that every student be treated fairly, equitably, and given the opportunity to excel. I reflect on the same newscast, superintendent, that you referenced earlier, and recall one student simply saying, I just want to learn. And if discipline is an issue, a barrier that is being created that is affecting their ability, any student's capacity to learn, then as a board, we have a responsibility to ensure that that occurs. And it sounds like that awareness is in place, yet I still see, in looking at slides 13, 14, and 15, a double-digit increase in the major referrals that is occurring among for Black students. And whether it is, and I don't think one student accounts for an increase of 207, and so let's not suggest or think that, oh, it's just a handful, because it's not necessarily the students in and of themselves that is creating the situation. If I understand Envoy correctly and properly, it is perhaps that coming together, both the minds of the staff and the student to work together to achieve the common goal. So at our elementary level and middle school, those are key areas. There are significant increases in major referrals. I think that must be understood, recognized, and I would ask that this be looked into versus, well, you're doing pretty good overall, and yeah, there's some increases here and there. Well, as a board member, I want to know why there are increases, especially to this degree, as well as wanting to know why there are successes, and you have shared, well, in part because of Emily. And so that's a great deal. I fully support that. And if we need to expand that, then we should do that. But at the same time, I want to hear a similar effort of concern being directed toward what's happening here. I would imagine perhaps Carl is speaking on behalf of Afolabi, but I would probably look to him to really give that information as to, since he's meeting regularly with the school principals and this information is being provided to him. But I think as members of the community as a whole, not just the African American community, but all sections and aspects of the community, they want good quality education for all our students. When I hear students say, I don't feel that I'm valued, I feel that I'm singled out, and all I want to do is go to school to learn, I think, again, we have to do everything we can to support that effort. And that's coming from a high schooler who perhaps is more adept in being able to navigate these difficulties. And so I want to just, comment that it is important for us to send a message that we're willing to do whatever we can versus this shrugging of our shoulders and simply saying, well, there is no silver bullet. We can't expect that anything to ever change. We're going to keep trudging ahead. Well, that's not the message I want to send as a member of Rochester Public School Board. I think our message should be very clear that we recognize there's a problem and we're going to do everything we can to work to resolve the problem. I spent a good portion of Monday at the professional development at the John Marshall, and innovation was the subject, and the thought of we need to change the way we are thinking and approaching issues. And this may be an opportunity for us to change the way we're thinking and approaching discipline. And there was one final thing unrelated to discipline that I did want to inquire regarding Guthrie and American Indian education. I just wanted to connect the dot. So it sounds like there is a great need for that cultural, historical knowledge and experience to be presented and provided for the 146 American Indian students, but not for them, but for all students, so that we can benefit and learn collectively. Is that kind of safe to say?